Viewers, you are watching us live from the Jones Motors Limited showroom in Scarborough, Tobago, and we're talking road safety. We're talking licensing and having your vehicles regulated. This morning I have on set with me the licensing commissioner, Clive Clarke, and I also have on set with me Senior Superintendent Tobago, Rohdill Kirk. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning to Tobago Updates. Good morning to your viewers.
Good morning. Good morning to you and good morning to your viewers also.
Thanks for coming to chat with us. So we're going to get straight into it. And of course, I'm going to start with the licensing commissioner because the topic is hot. It's burning. We're talking about road safety and vehicle roadworthiness. Now, we know that licensing officers, you all have your jobs to do. What the citizens or the general population is asking, what is the purpose of the numerous stops at the various locations? What's the intended purpose? What's the aim of the stops happening right now?
Again, thank you very much for having me on your program to clarify any issues, any concerns. Let me say, firstly saying the transport officers or the licensing officers, we continue to work and carry out joint operations with the TTPS, both in Trinidad and Tobago. We also here in Tobago on the request of the TTPS to facilitate a number of operations relevant to the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act. Enforcement on the nation's road at this magnitude, it is not new. It is not new for us as licensing officers because we conduct this type of exercise and at this volume every other day in Trinidad, and I mean at this magnitude. Likewise, we have visited Tobago time to time. What really spiked my interest with Tobago is that you will know we have been talking about transformation in licensing, bringing new systems, new ICT systems, and those systems have been revealing certain practices that I as commissioner have serious concern. We have information and intelligence at our fingertips, whereby we are finding vehicles which have duplicated chassis. We are finding vehicles which are registered twice. And when we verify with the stolen vehicles department, those vehicles you have registered owners complaining to us that those vehicles were stolen at some point in time. We have developed a system in such a way that when those vehicles visit the inspection stations and attempt to utilize our new inspection system, through an indirect system, we are made aware that those vehicles may have an issue. And I want to say though, sadly, we are finding a number of them in Tobago based on the records. So we are here not just with TTPS, we are also here with the full support of on-the-ground persons from the forensic department. So time to time, we have been taking certain decisions relevant to those. And you know what is sad? We have persons driving around with vehicles, owning vehicles for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and not knowing that I am in possession of a stolen vehicle.
Okay.
And therefore, when you now visit licensing and we bring that to your attention, we with liaison with the TTPS cannot leave you with that vehicle alone. That vehicle must be turned in for the relevant agencies to conduct their investigation. In addition to that, we have been seeing through our systems and as well through ground operations, a high number of persons who are disqualified and have been driving. We are seeing persons who basically the permits have been expired, no seat belts. And let me just say, when these individuals find themselves for some reason, someone with an expired permit, someone who have been disqualified, if that person caused an accident on the nation's road and bunks a law-abiding citizen, and maybe your child, maybe your mother, maybe your grandmother, that person could face major issues with insurance compensation.
So as it stands right now, Commissioner, would you say that the exercises by the licensing officers and perhaps in conjunction with the TTPS in Tobago, have they been fruitful? Have you all been really zoning in on areas that really need the attention?
And definitely, and you will hear the TTPS giving all those statistics in the public domain soon. I don't like to take the opportunity because it's their operations. So we are passing on the statistics to them, and it will be very revealing to see the type of things we have identified in Tobago.
So Tobagonians, and in particular pedestrians, those who are commuters rather, they're complaining about the inconvenience caused because of these roadblocks, reaching to work late and low productivity. What are your comments on that?
I'd like to pass that on to TTPS. So let me just say this in the context.
All right.
However,
So here is where we bring
like to
senior
pass that
Sue
question to the
in the
TTPS.
conversation. Mr. Kerr, yes. So the roadblocks have been inconveniencing law-abiding citizens or commuters. They don't have vehicles, they're commuting and they want to get to work on time. What are your comments on that? What do you have to say to those commuters?
Again, good morning. Passing strange that such comments could be put in the public space. Because here it is that the operations are geared towards weeding out errant drivers, persons who don't have their motor vehicles in a roadworthy condition. And that means that the persons who are targeted are persons who do not comply or conform with the traffic laws. So here it is. So you're telling me a law-abiding citizen is waiting to travel in a vehicle who could put them at risk. So think about that. So I am saying, whilst it may be some little inconvenience, these exercises are geared towards, as Mr. Clarke said, road safety and to ensure that persons using the roadways with motor vehicles are in compliance with the traffic laws. So whilst it may seem that way, it's for the greater good. And that is what I want to encourage persons to continue to cooperate with these exercises, because if they are not done, people have been calling for the police and law enforcement agencies to do their jobs.
Yeah.
And this is all that is taking place. When you do it, it may lead to some inconvenience. For instance, some of these operations, even with the licensing officers, people believe that is only geared towards money making by the state. And I beg to differ, because some of these exercises, persons who are arrested with illegal drugs, narcotics, etc., and even those exercises on the roadways, there are times when persons are arrested with firearms and ammunition, and that has been happening. Last week alone, several arms and ammunition were recovered, although not in Tobago, in Trinidad, based on the same exercises which are taking place.
Yeah.
So this is part of the effort of law enforcement of adopting a zero tolerance approach, because we have to start somewhere. As one of our president would have said, if you leave the streams to flow, they will flow into rivers and then into seas. And then at the time when they reach to that point, we can't bring it back.
Yeah.
So I am telling people, it may seem, people view it as harsh, oppressive, but we need to do what we need to do to get this thing back on the ground.
But I'm hearing and seeing where persons are planning protests, and even some politicians are voicing their support for protest action against the actions of the licensing officers in particular. What are your views on that?
All right, let me tell you this. People have the right to protest, that is one. But when you do it, you must do it within the framework of the law. I've seen on social media this morning where there were attempts to block the road in the vicinity of Mount Maria, the walkover. People put tires on the road and burned the tires. Eventually that was removed quickly by the fire service. And I'm saying, I'm encouraging persons, do not operate outside the law. If you do so, you may feel the brunt of the law coming down on you.
Yeah.
We are not going to tolerate people behaving in any errant manner or any manner against the law. We are going to enforce it. That is what we are there to do. I know people have the right to protest, but they may do so peacefully and without any contravention of the law. If you have to do any march or protests or so on, seek the relevant permission from the police, etc., to do that. So that is what I'm encouraging people to do. Operate within the framework of the law, and you will have no issues with the police.
Mr. Clarke, I want to bring you back in because we were talking about the commuters and the drivers not wanting to go into Scarborough and environs because they feel they may be ticketed. Some persons, their car is licensed, they don't have duplicate number plates, they have their sticker and so on, but we get the feeling that once you don't find something major, the licensing officers are looking for any little thing they can find just to issue a ticket. And that is what some of the road users are concerned about. Yes, you may not get a ticket for seat belts, you may not get a ticket for your tint, you may not get a ticket for your tires, but they're still looking, they're still perusing that vehicle, and any little thing, you get a ticket. And that's what some of them are afraid of. That's why they're not coming into town. Is that the purpose of the stops right now, to zone in and look for any little scratch, any little dent, any little, and issue a ticket?
And let me just say, a ticket, or we will say a fixed penalty notice, is issued in the context of the law. In other words, one must spot an offense. And I want to agree with you. Sometimes enforcement officers in general could sometimes take things to the extreme. That is not our objective. Let me say this, however. Any ticket issued to any individual, the law allows that person to contest that ticket. If that person so feels that I have not committed an offense and there is no need for a ticket to be given, the law allows you to contest that ticket within a certain time.
Yeah.
In addition to that, I also want to say law-abiding citizens who conform to the regulations, who conform to what is required under the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, basically have nothing to worry about. Generally speaking, when we conduct operations, I have seen, just on my way here this morning, Mr. Batson will tell you, we stop a young man, his seatbelt was off, and we had a conversation with him. We took the opportunity to educate and inform, and many times we do that. So therefore, I am saying, though, just to remind persons, if they so feel that's the case, they do have an opportunity to contest a ticket.
We've also been getting comments, and we're seeing it on the social platforms, that when you go to licensing, well, I can speak in particular for yesterday and perhaps the day before, that the officers are not there to inspect the vehicle. So it's almost as though there is an attempt to prevent persons from getting their vehicles in order so that tickets can be issued when they're traversing the roadways. Is that so?
Let me say though, a motor vehicle is inspected by an examiner in the private garage, or you will find an inspector at the licensing office. Inspectors and at the licensing office, we basically will inspect goods vehicles, which are T vehicles, and taxis. Vehicles which are private vehicles normally go to the inspection station. And I'm saying, though, generally speaking, they have the opportunity to do so. So I am not in support of the fact of access to examiners or to motor vehicle inspectors are not available. I also want to say the law allows someone to renew their inspection 1 month before expiration. One don't need to wait until your inspection sticker is expired and then go to licensing. We need to manage that. And also, let me say that the same thing for your driver's permit. In the event your permit is due expiration, you can renew that permit within 1 month, the expiration.
And we want to go for a quick break, but before that, I just want to get from you, in terms of your officers in Tobago, are they trained to deal with situations like that? As opposed to escalating it one time, are they trained to have a conversation and inform drivers about the regulations and so on before they escalate the situation?
Oh, most definitely, and I want to say all licensing officers. Recently I was so pleased when we came to an agreement whereby we could have identified 2 officers for Tobago who we have on the ground and motor vehicle officers, and they have also went through the necessary training, which part of their training is customer service training before they go on the nation's road.
You wanted to add to the conversation?
No, I just wanted to support what Mr. Clarke was saying. You don't wait until you reach that end to go and renew. And take into consideration that Tobago have limited stations in which to do that, people should be aware that this is happening and take the opportunity to do it and not wait until you see licensed officers come into Tobago before you go to inspect. But this morning I saw around by Vemcott there are a number of vehicles waiting to go and inspect, and you wouldn't have seen that had it not been for the officers being in Tobago.
Yeah. Well, I take it that some persons are not aware. So how do they become aware of some of the infringements in terms of vehicles? Is there an awareness campaign, something to the effect where persons can be made aware of some of the violations? Because I know that some people just don't know some of the minor things that the officers are looking at. Some pedestrians, some commuters, some drivers, they don't know.
Let me say, all drivers, all legitimate drivers would have gone through regulations. What they would have done what is necessary to earn their license. And that is an opportunity also where persons would have been educated on the laws of the segment of the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act. I also want to say ignorance of the law is not a reason.
Definitely.
It's not an excuse. And therefore we are to avail ourselves with that which is right. Finally, when we conduct a vehicle inspection, there's a checklist. And if you have a checklist that carries a certificate, you need to look at that checklist and ensure that and be mindful what is normally checked for on my vehicle, so the information is available for the citizens.
Well, we want to take a short break. We're going to continue the conversation when we return. Please stay with us because it's an informative session this morning. We're talking road safety and vehicle regulations. We'll be back after this. Welcome back, viewers. Good morning, Tobago. We're live from the Jones Motors Limited showroom in Scarborough, and we're talking vehicle regulations and we're talking road safety. I have on set with me the licensing commissioner, Mr. Clive Clarke, and senior Sub Tobago Rohdill Kirk. And we want to continue the conversation regarding vehicle regulation. And we're talking tint at this point in time. We know that the tint laws have been passed and persons are to adhere. What are the specifics? What do drivers need to be mindful of?
All right, let me just go back a bit. The Ministry of Works and Transport recently, in conjunction with the Ministry of National Security, I think it was Monday of this week, we have entered into a media campaign relevant to tint, to take the opportunity over the next 6 weeks to inform members of the public as to what this new regulation is about, why, and as well as how enforcement will take place. I want to also say at this point in time, make it absolutely clear. At this point in time, officers are not issuing any tickets for tint. It's one in which we are taking the opportunity to inform persons on the new regulations. Now, tint is serious business to us. Tint basically is one where everyone, I want to say, for some reason, may have a justification for tint. And tint has its benefit in terms of for medical reasons, as well as aesthetics with the vehicle, as well as to help with the temperature, etc. So we all need tint. But tint becomes a problem when it's now too dark. You find yourself putting citizens at risk with dark tint. You find yourself putting a driver himself at risk. Interference with visibility, interference with non-verbal communication, interference, most of all, it is of concern to us, safety to enforcement officers. So as a result, we had to take the necessary steps to introduce the key aspects of the tint regulations. And, yes. And allow me to say, the new regulations brings with it technology as well as measuring devices in terms of enforcement of tint. It will no longer be an aspect whereby Officer John or Officer X or Y can simply look at your vehicle and say your tint is dark, because that was based on perception, it was based on the time of day, it was based on the upholstery within the vehicle. We have now brought a science into that, whereby you use a measuring device to test that tint, and regardless of time of day or night, the readers will provide that relevant information. What is the law? What is the new law based on tint? It is one which gives a certain VLT, which is the visible light transmittance, for a certain VLT level for the front windscreen.
Yes.
Which is a VLT of 70. The front windscreen also carries an anti-glare band, which the law requires that to be 35. It also gives for the front windows, that's the driver and the passenger side. The requirement under the new law is 35 VLT, and the back windows, inclusive of the back windscreen, we are looking at 20%. So we see here everyone basically has an opportunity to tint their vehicle within the relevant limit. The law, however, allows the provision for persons who may have medical issues to apply to the transport commissioner, or person who may have a justification and think that there's a need for darker tint. They can so apply for consideration. We sometimes talk about tint, but the law also talks about curtains, right? You know, sometimes persons place curtains on their vehicle. The law prohibits that, except for in situations where there's a child 5 years and under within the vehicle. So let's look at a common situation. I have seen it here even in Tobago. Someone come from the beach and they hang the towel on the window and block the entire vehicle, and they continue to proceed. If we allow these type of things to continue, allow that thing to continue, persons could use this mechanism quite easily to evade law enforcement officers. So in a nutshell, that is what the new legislation is about.
Mr. Kirk, do you think this would assist the police, and if so, how? And do you find a lot of Tobagonians, in particular drivers, having issues with tint and the darkness of tint on vehicles are concerned?
Yes, well, first and foremost, I would want to say that it will assist the police, because what we recognize is that most of, let me say, the shooting incidents that we have, a vehicle has been used, and what witnesses will describe is that a heavily tinted vehicle. And this allows persons who are in criminal activity to also be covert in terms of where they would surveil to do their criminal act. So that in itself would assist the police, and it will also assist whereby persons could readily recognize when something is happening. Even when people are bundled into vehicles against their will, people tend to discover that easier than before. And Tobago, I have seen it in the recent past that vehicles in Tobago has been, you know, having tint to such an extent that, you know, and even the whole front glass, the whole back glass, tint so dark that with the littlest of light, you can't see who is inside it. Yeah. So I'm saying, again, this is a measure that would assist law enforcement. And again, too, you as a law enforcement officer outside on duty and somebody rushing through with a heavily tinted vehicle, there are many things that could cause a different reaction. So that in itself, you know, is something that I believe is a welcome measure, and it is something that we on the law enforcement side would also enforce, right? And that is something that we welcome.
Mr. Clarke, we had a situation recently where an ambulance was stopped. Ambulance with siren and going to the hospital was stopped by licensing officers. That didn't sit well with citizens. It didn't sit well with our leaders. It doesn't sit well with Tobago. What are your comments on that situation?
Thanks for raising that question.
And was that operating in the confines of the laws? Where does the law allow for emergency situations?
Okay, let me first answer that by clarifying what happened, right? Because I got that information 2 nights ago about 10:15 while I was on the road. And I saw that information based on 2 pieces of information circulated on the internet. One, a video, and I also saw a posting on the internet which someone claimed that happened. And as a result, I took the position similar to a very senior government official. Such information requires an investigation, right? Because we live in an information age where persons put anything out in the public domain, and you have to validate the facts. So myself and Sergeant Brent Batson quickly conducted an investigation relevant to that. Because we have our persons on the ground. And what we understand, though, is that yes, there was a road operation in the vicinity of Lowlands. And as you mentioned earlier on, sometimes when we are conducting operations, it creates line of traffic sometimes. And we have seen that in Trinidad. It's a common practice. And you will see, I want to switch up ambulance and now use the term emergency vehicle and come back to ambulance. And we have seen time to time during roadblocks, emergency vehicles sometimes may have a little challenge in getting through the traffic. And as a result of such, we take the necessary steps to give way to that vehicle. And sometimes you have to walk up to the vehicle and let the driver know, I'm going to allow you to come through this direction for ease for you to get to your destination. And on that particular day, that is exactly what happened. A police officer would have taken the opportunity to approach the driver and to basically to allow the driver to know exactly where I will pass you through. So the vehicle was not stopped by any enforcement officer, a police officer or a licensing officer. The driver was engaged and was informed in terms of where you will now pass to get to your destination quite easy through the traffic, and that's a common practice. And as a result of that, we would have then ensured that the ambulance would have got by. Let me talk in the context of an ambulance. An ambulance is an emergency vehicle under the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act. The commissioner cannot approve lights and siren for an ambulance unless that ambulance fulfills what is required in the Emergency Personnel Act, which means it must have that necessary approval, and then I could approve lights and siren. And relevant to Section 110 of the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, ambulance or any vehicle that carries an approved light and siren. So if I approve your vehicle with lights and siren, that vehicle becomes an emergency vehicle, and therefore has the opportunity for right away doing those sort of operations.
So the ambulance, the drivers were not inconvenienced, they were not stopped, they were not searched. It was just a way for them to pass through to get to the hospital.
Definitely, and that is exactly what took place on that day.
But we've seen in Tobago, and I'm not sure if we're short on resources where licensing officers are concerned, where does the need for licensing officers from Trinidad come in when we have licensing officers in Tobago? Why such a large number of officers from Trinidad when we have licensing officers in Tobago?
A very good question. Let's look at Tobago. Currently, Tobago has 2 motor vehicle officers. And let's check the amount of vehicles. Just look at it.
Yeah.
2 motor vehicle officers to be on the road, it is not sufficient for Tobago for enforcement. And I'll tell you something. As a result of that, we have taken the decision in joint discussion with the authorities that we will be sending officers here every X time. I wouldn't say what X time is, but you will see time to time, you'll see every 2-3 weeks, it could be 4 weeks, you see 3 or 4 licensed officers in Tobago, right? And there's a need for that, because when there's a lack of enforcement, similar to what Commander said a while ago, it builds a culture that when you start to enforce, persons raise certain concerns. And again, let me repeat that. When there's a lack of enforcement, when persons are not accustomed to enforcement, and enforcement then comes, whether it is in a small group or large group, it causes some concerns within the public domain. I will want to say Tobago really should have approximately 25 licensing officers at the structure for Tobago. Apparently, at this point in time, that is not so.
What is preventing that? That's my next
Well,
question.
again, let me just say the commissioner hands are tied because we have recruitment processes, we have certain approval you must go through to ensure you recruit the right persons, etc. And what I can say is that we have put forward certain recommendations, and we are hoping in due process and due time we will see much more officers.
So that process can be expedited, considering that we have limited resources in Tobago and then therefore need Trinidad officers to come to Tobago to conduct the searches and so on. Why can't we have that resource in Tobago, that capacity in Tobago?
Right, and again, and let me say, and I want to differentiate, a transport officer can work anywhere according to the law that the commissioner designates that officer to work. So there isn't anything to say that there's a Trinidad licensing officer and a Tobago licensing officer. I want us to understand that. So at any point in time, I could assign any licensing officer to Tobago. I want to look at it as a general conversation, because at times we do call the licensing officers from Tobago to come up to Trinidad to work with us, and vice versa. The point I'm saying, though, it is time that we also have more officers in Tobago present to conduct operation. Whether you are from Trinidad or you're from Tobago, we need consistency there.
And I just wanted to add that.
Yes.
And thank God you cleared it up, because people have the perception in Tobago that you have Trinidad police and Tobago police. We have a Trinidad and Tobago police service. And just like times that Trinidad officers that are based in Trinidad will come to Tobago to work, the same likewise happens where officers from Tobago go to Trinidad and do operations the same way. So the thing about it, people tend to have that mindset that, use that Trinidad police, use that Tobago police. And we need to get away from that. This is the 21st century.
Right.
And we need to start thinking differently. That where there are issues in terms of enforcement or criminal activity, the police commissioner will deploy resources to where she sees fit to deal with situations. And it's just that, because we may be challenged for resources in some instances, and therefore we need additional support. So that is what really occurs sometimes. And people take it out of context to say, well, Trinidad police coming to do Tobago police work. That is, we don't have that. We have the Trinidad and Tobago police service.
And as we're on the topic of police and police officers, there are some police officers whose vehicles are not up to standard, they're not up to scratch. We see them from time to time. And so when we're talking law enforcement and leadership and those in authority, we're looking to those who have the authority to do certain things, to be carrying out the regulations as they should. In terms of officers who are not compliant, what do you have to say to those officers this morning who vehicles probably not inspected, not up to scratch, but they're coming out to tell us your vehicles are not up to scratch?
So you're talking about their personal vehicles or the,
yes,
or the police
personal vehicles,
vehicles?
and then
we
also have vehicles under the TTPS that are not in regulations. And when we're talking transport regulations, we see TTPS vehicles driving around. Sometimes a door is dent, a glass is broken, a windshield is cracked rather, and so on. Tires are quite smooth. Sometimes you've seen thread in tires. What do you have to say about that?
I am not aware of what you speak of. I know sometimes there may be some minor defects on the vehicle. Right. That is something that has been worked on. But in terms of police officers with their private vehicles, nobody is above the law. And we do encourage our officers to make sure that you are compliant, because we don't want to be sending a message. We don't want to be preaching, and we are condoning it. So I'm saying police officers often are made aware of this, and likewise, a lot of police officers often end up on that side where they are ticketed as well. So it's not that, because the same thing, when you do wrong, the law deals with you. If you're a police officer and you commit a criminal act, we treat with you the same way. So it's not to say, well, okay, it's something that we look the other way. We do enforce it as well.
Yeah. And so we are talking road safety, we're talking having your vehicles in such a way that you won't be ticketed by the licensing officers. We spoke about tint, but we also see officers with heavily tinted vehicles. Sometimes the police vehicles are heavily tinted. Is that permitted by law?
Yes, so that is.
Well, yes.
The Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act exempt certain vehicles from tint. And there's a list, and the ministry will put that in the public domain. And let me just say, police is one of them. Police vehicles registered to the TTPS. And we're not talking about the private vehicles. They are vehicles that are exempted from such, and there are several other key agencies. I just want to take the opportunity to say one thing on tint before I miss it, because we have had in the past where I would have seen I've seen several enforcement officers issue ticket for tint, basically per windshield. So I stop you and I give you a ticket for the front windscreen, for the windows, etc. And you end up with sometimes 4 tickets. The new law prevents that, right? Because when a ticket is issued under the new system, you must issue that ticket with a certificate, and that certificate is per vehicle and per any window. So an officer cannot abuse the system by giving you several tickets for a tint infraction.
And before we go to a break, I want to ask you, are the road searches and the road stops continuous? When I leave here and I go out, would I be approached by an officer to say XYZ is the case? When does it stop? Or is it a continuous thing? Are drivers being made to stay home for another day because they're afraid that a little dent, a little scratch, a little something they might get ticketed for that?
When you ask about road searches, I think that's for Mr. Kirk.
Yes. Well, you talk about stop and search. That is something that is ongoing. And it has been happening before, and it continues. The thing about it is that our colleagues are here and we will support them in their initiative as well. It's a collaborative effort. So it's not to say that it's something that, is random. When I say random, we are going to continue doing it because we have seen this
In conjunction with the licensing officers?
conjunction with the licenses and even the TTPS and other agencies. We are going to do it because we recognize a trend in Tobago that a number of high-powered weapons are being used on crime scene. And high-powered weapons are not something that people just walk down the road willy-nilly with. It has been moved from place to place in motor vehicles. So in addition to what the licensing officers are doing, we are going to support and we are going to do our part in terms of, enforcing the laws in relations to persons, breaking the law or moving illicit items within motor vehicles. We are going to do it. It's continuous. I can't tell you that it will stop. I can't tell you when we're going to do it, but we are going to continue it as we go throughout the end of the year.
And in terms of the officers coming from Trinidad to Tobago, is that something that is budgeted for? How is that handled in terms of the finances?
Yeah, definitely. There is a budget in place for when officers come to Tobago, and we cannot come to Tobago on our own expense. So basically, there is a budget in place, and it's one in which we comply with in the context of ensuring that the ministry use the right procurement mechanism as we utilize that budget. And matter of fact, for us being here, the financial aspect of this matter is not approved by the Transport Commissioner. I do not have that authority under the law. It is approved by the Permanent Secretary.
Right. Well, we're going to take a short break. Viewers, we're talking about road safety and we're talking about vehicle regulations. When we come back, we have a live demonstration. We have a vehicle because we're at Jones Motors Limited showroom in Scarborough. We have a vehicle and we're going to talk about the regulations and ensure that you have the information in terms of keeping your vehicle up to standard so you won't be ticketed. We take a break and come back with more. Stay with us. And viewers, we are back. We're live from Jones Motors Limited showroom in Scarborough, Tobago, and we're talking vehicle regulations and road safety. Right now, we're going to be inspecting a vehicle. We're just going to demonstrate for you how the tint technology is supposed to work. So we have a vehicle in front of us, and we're going to demonstrate with Sergeant Batson and WPC Allen of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. They're going to demonstrate for us how the tint technology is supposed to work. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. And we want to encourage persons, as the Transport Commissioner mentioned, they're looking at a 6-week period for sensitization. So actually, this is one of the first sensitization exercises being done in Tobago, with the new approved tint meter device. Right. Again, this device is now allowing quantitative measurement as opposed to the subjective assessment that used to occur before, and it allows transparency in that system. The devices go through calibration checks to ensure that it's working correctly and it's measuring what it's supposed to measure. So I'm going to hand over to this trained technician, is WPC Allen, and she will explain within the device and the processes that we use to actually look at what we call vehicle light transmissibility levels, which is the amount of light moving through a glass. Yeah.
Okay, so firstly, we'll turn on the device. Because it has no glass between it, it should read 100. 100 will be light transmission with no interruptions. So you should see 100 pop up there. Good. So as you remember, the front glass is supposed to be 35%. So one part in the back here, areas have a little cushion here, so you're not going to scratch your glass, cushion on both sides.
So here it's firing the light through the send and receive, and getting a measurement.
This is 73.1.
Which is well within the compliance range of 35% for your front glass. So again, just to remind persons, if we look at the vehicle here, what is the law permitting? It's allowing what they call 70% on your front windscreen. You're allowed a 35% anti-glare band, which is 6 inches down from the top. That's 35% to the top, what we call a sun visor strip. You're allowed 35% for the driver, front seat passenger window, and anything to the rear of that is 20%. And like I said, we're encouraging persons during this period to please bring your vehicles into compliance. Apply for exemptions. You have various grounds for exemptions. Take a look at the law, whether it's medical, whether it's general or security. The point is the Transport Commissioner is the only person who could grant these exemptions, no one else. So if you have your needs, please try and justify it. But most importantly, do not apply illegal or unauthorized tint levels until you're granted that exemption. Okay? We don't want to hear, I have my application inside. That's the wrong time. It means you have not been granted it as yet, and therefore you're out of compliance. So, like I said, Tobago, we want your support by starting this initiative, get everybody vehicles up to speed, support the TTPS, support the Ministry of Works and Transport to bring your vehicles in compliance with the law.
And kindly reiterate for viewers, there's a period of sensitization where persons can go and get their vehicles regulated. What is that period?
Well, two things I just want to mention, and I'm so glad you did, right? What you do not want to do is go to a tint shop that is unable to measure the tint level. So a tint shop should have a tint measuring device to verify you're within compliance. Most vehicles, even from the time they roll off from a showroom without any tint applied, comes with a tint level pre-manufactured into that glass. So to apply a tint level on top of it, so if you just go and ask for, like I said, 35%, and the person will give you that 35%, but he has no tint measurement. He drops the 35%, but there was a pre-existing layer that was there before of let's just say 80%. You now move from a 35% realm all the way down to maybe a 22. So, and then you didn't have a device to double check, but you rolled out with it saying, hey, I put 35%. Yeah, but the person didn't measure it. You know, so we really want persons to be a little bit more vigilant of how they go about placing those tint levels on.
And I have one more question, because persons are also concerned. Sometimes you tint your vehicle and over a period of time, you start seeing bubbles.
Sure.
How do you go about that? Is that something that they can be ticketed for? Is that something that drivers have to be worried about?
Well, it is, because it's actually one of the new violations under this tint law. Okay, so remember what it's trying to do is anything that obscures the vision, right? Even if the driver out or the person on the outside, like law enforcement looking in. So that is a new ticketable violation on the system as well. So old tint scratches, you know, this tend to fade, it becomes hazy. Those are the things that can result in the wrong side of the law as well.
Right. Thank you so very much, Sergeant Batson, for chatting with
Sure.
us and for demonstrating WPC Allen how the tint technology works. We're going to take a short break and come back with more. Do stay with us. Viewers, welcome back. And unfortunately, we have come to the end of this morning's program. I want to say thank you to Licensing Commissioner Clive Clarke for joining us. Also, thanks to our Senior Superintendent Tobago, Mr. Rohdill Kirk from the TTPS, also Mr. Sergeant Batson and the WPC Allen. They demonstrated for us a short while ago the tint technology and how it works. I want to encourage persons, I want to encourage drivers to be compliant, to ensure that your vehicles are up to scratch, to ensure that you have everything under control so as to not be ticketed by the licensing officers or by police officers. Ensure that we're compliant, that we're doing our part. I want to say thank you to Jones Motors Limited for accommodating us this morning. They're the agent in Tobago for Mazda, Kia, Isuzu, and Audi. You can contact them at 639-5511 or 639-4584. Follow them on social media, Instagram and Facebook. And you can also check out their website, jonesmotorstt.com. Ask about their specials, vehicle discounts, and insurance packages. Once again, coming to you live from the Jones Motor Showroom in Scarborough, Tobago, I'm Patricia Nicholson-Richards, thanking you for joining us and wishing you a great day.